Okay, if you're coming from the parking lot, I'm the very first door on the right, it says Meals on Wheels right next to the door, that's my office. Yeah. But, where was I going with that? I don't even remember.
I had my back used in November.
But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge every single day, and we just got to make sure our seniors get fed.
Saying, what's going on? They said, well, let's get another MRI.
Yeah. No, we deliver, the problem is with kids that age, we deliver between 10:45 and 1 o'clock. So that's a problem for kids in school. Yeah. We don't deliver on weekends. We deliver the folks that still get weekend meals, we deliver those on Friday along with their hot meal, and then the weekend bags for the folks that don't get the hot meal.
Because that's too early for surgery. I just had surgery.
Yeah.
I'm back in there.
Nice to meet you too, Dominique. You too.
I'm not sure because I don't want to keep doing this every year.
Looking at the age, that's the conversations, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or somebody passed away, one of the two. I'd rather have surgeries than hearing that.
Jim, it is wheelchair ramp.
We'll call our meeting to order. This is the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency, our regularly scheduled meeting. It's February 12th, 2024 at 6 p.m. And we will ask our secretary to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Porter?
Here.
Commissioner Doty?
Here.
Commissioner Warwick? Here. Commissioner Brooks?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Commissioner August?
Here.
Commissioner Garcia?
Here.
Very good. Full house. Are there any conflicts of interest among any of the commissioners with anything that appears on our agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none. Moves us to our special presentations. We have a presentation by Ide Bailey, our audit for last year. Welcome. If you'd give us your name.
Thank you. My name is Bobby Lawrence with Ide Bailey. We're the accounting firm, and I appreciate the chance to come before the commissioners. You should have received two pieces of communication there. One is a short letter, about 3 pages, and the other one is the financial statements. And I'm just going to give a very brief high-level summary, but happy to answer any questions you may have. I know this is already ancient history as far as financial information goes. So on the financial statements, on page 1, and then in the very back on page 26 are the reports on the findings, essentially. And there are none. It's a clean audit opinion. So that's the good news, and the thing to focus on is there were no deficiencies to communicate there. Your financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP, and there's nothing to note in there. But good reading, if you want to, is the management discussion analysis starting on page 4. That's information your finance department puts together to tell the story about what happened in the city or in the authority during the year. So other than that, I mean, you had a lot of changes, obviously, which you're all well of in the agency there. But on the finance side, if you go to that letter, and there's 3 pages there that basically give you a lot of paragraphs that say there were none. But in there, if we had any deficiencies we found as a result of our audit, if we had any adjustments to your financial information, if we had disagreements with management, any difficulties, that's where we'd say all that. This is basically just boilerplate template that says we didn't have any of that stuff. So thank you to Raylyn and her team for giving you financial information that you could rely on all year long, and we don't have a bunch of adjustments as we come in at the end of the year and clean things up like is common in a lot of entities. So thank you for that. It makes our job easy, and we can get through it efficiently. So I'm happy to answer any detailed questions you have, but that's, in summary, it's clean opinion and everything's as it should be.
Very good. Thank you very much. Questions?
Clean.
Yeah,
Clean?
great.
That's all that matters.
We like
All right.
that.
Mr. Moore, any questions?
This is the first I've seen it, so I guess I probably would. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I bring them up at a later time. This is the first I've seen any of this. So it's a lot of information to kind of go through, but I appreciate the update that he's here today and saying, and good job. But yeah, I mean, did anybody else read this yet? This whole thing from start?
We all just got it.
We all just got it.
Yeah, we all just got it.
Yeah.
My point is, maybe we could get a little bit earlier. I don't know. Could we can review it before this meeting?
Raylan, do you want to speak to that?
So I gave a copy to Debbie as an electronic copy, and then these physical copies to you guys to keep as well. So, I thought that you would have put them in your packet.
When did those go out?
So the packet went out last week.
Yes, it was.
Right, but when did yours go out? Because this is the first I've seen this.
So
Anybody
that's what I thought, is that it would have gone out in the packet as well as an electronic copy.
No, it did not.
So,
Chairman,
Mr. Brooks?
Commissioner Moore, page 42 of the electronic copy.
Page 42.
There it is. This is at least where the letter started.
And I'm happy to follow up on any additional questions you have after you get through it at
Okay,
a
thank
later
you.
time. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
Yep, thank you.
Good job, Raylan.
You always got to get that in there, don't you? All right, that ends our special presentations for the evening. Time for public comment, where members of the public can address the commissioners on any item that is not on the agenda. Okay, very good. Takes us to our consent calendar. What is your disposition?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Allgood?
move that we accept the consent calendar as written.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Allgood, a second by Mr. Doty. Any questions or comments? Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Allgood,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Doty,
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick,
yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
No.
Okay, that takes us to our next item, our old business. One action item, consider resolution accepting the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency, Caldwell Central Urban Renewal Area feasibility statement from Clearwater Financial. Raylyn, are you introducing this, or do we go right to Jason? Okay, thank you.
So, as you are aware, we contracted with Clearwater to do the feasibility study, and we have worked with them to finalize the feasibility study, though it is for the area that was not discussed earlier today. It was for the one that we discussed last year. Within this area, it does use 2020, is it 2023 values or 2020? Yeah, 2023 values. So it's not current values that that Clearwater currently used, because it was essentially last year's values for property taxes. But per the contract, we needed to finalize a report, and that's what they have provided to us. So if you have questions, we have someone from Clearwater to provide any questions on the feasibility report. So.
Very good.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Doty?
Raylan, did you find any errors in this report?
So before it was sent over, I did review the report. I worked with Jace to correct one table that just had a number that needed to be fixed, yes.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Allgood?
So just so I'm confirming, this is finalizing a previous report. Our plans have now changed, so this is not something we would probably move forward with. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Very good. Thank you, Raylyn.
Question, Mr.
Oh, Mr.
Chairman.
Moore?
Raylyn, I don't know if this is for you or for anybody here. Who authorized the order of this feasibility study? Because that's a $25,000 fee, and we're not gonna use this.
So it's kind of a dual thing. So I selected I worked with the Clearwater, and then I brought the contract before this board to authorize the contract for approval, and then the resolution, because it was not a budgeted item. So the contract, so I brought it before the board, but, yeah.
So you authorized the
Yes.
study, this feasibility study?
No, we did.
We did by resolution.
We did.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, I guess I just want to get that on the record. Raylene found someone to give her a quote for doing it. She brought it before us, and we authorized to spend that $25 to do.
Yeah, I know,
the
I
study.
voted on it. I did. I guess maybe I need to re-ask it. Who authorized her for this area to bring this forward? Did we, we approved the area? Who authorized?
We did.
Did?
This originated with economic development in the mayor's office.
At economic development?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty.
I'll make a motion that we accept the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency, Caldwell Central Urban Renewal Agency feasibility statement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Ms. Warwick. Any further comments or questions? Okay, would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Alves?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. This takes us up to kind of a new line in our agenda. It's an update report with current approved developers. Mark, can you kind of give us a heads up as to the conversations that brought this and put it on our agenda, and how you see this moving forward, and how we would use this as a tool in the next season?
Happy to do that, Chairman and Commissioners. It is under the attorney report for discussion. We can bump that up now, sort of as a precursor to those that are going to appear before you. We have been generally reporting as staff on the status of projects, and there's been concerns that have been voiced by certain commissioners about having the actual folks come and talk about their projects and the status of their projects, and where they're at and what they need and what problems that they might be encountering, and generally updating on project status. And so we reached out to these four. I think that there may be another one here on the theater phase that could speak, Mr. Dancer. But ask them to come and introduce themselves and talk about their projects and answer questions that you might have, and talk about status. And so really it's basically a report. The DDAs require them to do that periodically, and they require them to do it at the request of the commission. And so as you listen to the reports tonight, I think really the question that I have is it helpful? I'm sure it will be. And then I think the question really we need to kind of think through is this going to be regular every month? Is it going to be every other month, quarterly? Do we want to have at times in lieu of reports, do we want to have something written that could be provided and given to you in your packet? To think through, right? I think that's basically a decision for the commissioners to make. This is helpful. There will be times on different projects at different times when there's not a lot that happens, and maybe not a lot to update you on in an intervening month. And so that's what I'm trying to make sure that we consider, that we're not having developers come down to kind of say the same thing that they told us last month. But anyway, that's ultimately, I think, something for you to consider. We could do it every meeting here for a little while, and see how it goes. And if that turns out to be too frequent, we could maybe cut back. But I think it's going to be helpful going forward to have this in place. The question is going to be, sort of what frequency, and then maybe even, what kind of things you want to hear in the report, if there's detailed information, other than just, kind of where they're at in process. So,
very good. Thank you,
with that,
Mark.
I stand for questions.
Questions for Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Hilty.
Mr. Moore?
So you're saying that it would it's not beneficial to have them come a developer show up, or a project manager, or their counsel to come up every month? You think that's too repetitious?
No, my point simply was, as you listen to the reports, consider that.
Yeah.
You know, we certainly want to maintain, you know, a status on the report. And you can ask them, is every month too often? Is there enough going on in a month that a monthly report makes sense? Or should it be at a less frequent, interval? I don't know the answer to that. So I'm just saying that ultimately how that's resolved is gonna be up to the commissioners.
Yeah.
So, I'll probably towards the end of the meeting at my report, just be asking you to provide some input on that, you know, maybe based on what you hear tonight.
Yeah, I just think it's a fiscal responsibility of the developer or the project manager to be here and to give us an update, whether it's, you know, nothing else has happened, here's where we're at, we'll see you next meeting, and we'll kind of give you an idea. I think the track record and looking back on some of these other properties that have set, I think that might dictate part of this, so I think it could be helpful.
Okay.
I have another question for Mr. Hilty. The RFP process, and you and I spoke on this, and let's just talk about it now. How do we feel about, you know, a deposit with the you know, prior to the RFP application and the presentation to the, I mean, what could we do on that? We've touched on that lightly, you and I, but
We did, and I think there's two times that you could talk about a deposit. One would be at the time that the RFP is submitted. The other one would be if we have negotiated a DDA with a successful responder.
Yeah.
There would be a deposit. The latter, I think, is probably not uncommon in urban renewal projects. We have not done that consistently. The concern I would have with a deposit at the time of the RFP is, you know, that there's an awful lot of work and effort that goes into those RFP responses that is not compensated. And if we put some kind of a deposit on top of that, that would be, I guess, subject to being forfeit at some point under certain conditions. You know, that might increase the risk of how much work the developers are doing that they're putting at risk when they don't know at the RFP process.
Yeah.
You know, whether they're gonna be the successful responder, and then beyond that, are we gonna be able to come to terms on the DDA?
Yeah.
And so my concern about the RFP, at the deposit at the time of the RFP would be that it might have a chilling effect on, you know, generating, you know, responses.
But just looking at this 9th and Arthur lot, that, you know, I reviewed it. It looks like it was originally awarded to Casey Gardner Group. Then it went over to, from there, the developer became CMI. From there, it was determined that there'd be some splits on that property, but it also said that there was, you know, I'm looking at section F, evidence of financing. Says, and this is resolution number 201641 that you provided, thank you. And just looking at it, it says developer is unable to submit evidence of financing commitment by the deadline set forth. This agreement will automatically terminate and the development's deposit shall be refunded pursuant to section 110. I mean, couldn't we go back to this in some of these deals where it is refundable if it doesn't go through?
Yes, certainly. And that was, of course, a deposit that was paid with the DDA by the successful developer. It was not done at the time of the RFP. The short answer to your question is yes, we can reinstate those terms in future DDAs.
That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Okay, we get to hear some update reports, and our first will be from our RC contractors, Mr. Cooper. Welcome.
Okay. So quick update is we are at 95% construction drawings. Our goal is to be submitted by March 1st to the City of Caldwell. Our funding is in place, and our tenants are about 60% in place at this time. So all systems go for us.
Very good. Questions for Mr. Cooper?
I have a question,
Mr.
Mr.
Doty?
Chair. So I think where this comes about, and maybe it wasn't stated very clearly, but a lot of times, dates are missed. Maybe not a lot of times, but often, or a few, whatever word you wanna use. And so, I think that's this commission's issue, is that maybe you're good, but then, people line up very quickly to get assistance from us, but then they don't, always pay attention to the dates that are required.
Right.
In the DDA and so we know that, especially during the COVID years, that some of the products were delayed. But if you're not on track and you're not hitting the dates that you've contractually committed yourself to, we really want to report and why, you haven't hit those dates. Not as a gotcha, but just to come in and say, you know, the metal, the iron, the roof didn't arrive. You know, so that we know, and it's transparent to our constituents as well, right? So I think that's it. So, are you on track with your dates for your property, or are you?
No, I'm not.
You're not?
No.
So,
From what originally was said, no,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not. And there's a lot of different factors for that. I mean, there's a factor that the city didn't want to have to, demo all the footings and foundations of the old building. So we had to work through that. It took us quite a while to get to that point to where we can agree with my structural engineer and the city engineers to figure out what that backfill was gonna be like. So that kind of derailed us for a little bit. And then just, frankly, just other projects kind of just got shuffled into the mix while I was waiting on that one. And it just kind of got shuffled to the bottom. Got it recirculated, got it re-going again, and here we are. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Allgood?
So I've been curious about the groundwork, because I know that was a difficult process to get through that, because there were some unexpected things there.
Yeah.
Are you good now? Are you at a point where, you can start going up when your drawings are complete and everything, or you still have work to do?
Yes, from the conversations with my structural engineer and your guys' your engineers as well too. We cut the footings foundations down enough to where everybody was comfortable, and then they backfilled with, material that was, sustainable for what we're gonna do up top. So we should be able to just get our permits, start digging and moving right forward. So we shouldn't have to go back or take us any steps back, so.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mr. Cooper.
Chairman, I'm sorry, I have a
Mr. Moore?
question, unless you want me to slow down on it, but evidence of financing, how are you doing on financing? Any financing on that, or?
Our financing is in place.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, and then let me just go through this, I went through this original agreement. And maybe, Mr. Hilty, you can clarify some of this, the lender modifications in this agreement, was there some sort of earnest money put down on this, or no?
Not at the time,
Okay, so nothing has been put down?
no.
That's correct. Okay.
Sorry to answer your question for you, if I would have known if I cut a check or not,
That's
so.
fine, that's why hey, I appreciate you being here, thank you, this is what we're trying to get at, we're getting it right from you.
Yeah.
And then,
It's fine.
next, it's,
To
if
jump
we're not
back-
on timeline, that's.
To jump back in on one of your other conversations, having us come in on a monthly basis.
I can barely hear you, I'm sorry.
To having us come in on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if there would be much more that I would be able to report to you next month, except for, the plans have been submitted. And if it's, worth for me to come down here and talk to you guys, I'm more than welcome to do that, but, and then once construction gets under the way, I mean, I don't know if you guys wanna, schedule details of what was going on a monthly basis, but.
I do,
Okay.
I do, I mean, I do, I'm sorry, I heard something over here.
I mean, is it
But
something that
I
you would
do.
want me to come in personally and come
Or
update
your
you, or
council,
can
or
I
your
just?
project manager, or whoever. I mean, we're not on schedule with this, right? You
Mhm.
said that we're not on schedule,
Yep.
so I think it would just eliminate some confusion on all of us. I really do, and some of the things that have been said prior,
I mean,
that
it
are
is
coming up.
It's a little bit of a tall order to ask people to come in monthly.
Yeah, I don't think so as it's been awarded to you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of the agreement. I think it should be. I think
Okay.
you'd wanna update us, especially if we're not on track or not, where we're supposed to be. And I think it just eliminates, a lot of confusion of what we may have here and that we don't know. Because it's been how long since this was awarded, Mark? December of 2022? So over a year.
Yeah, that's my memory. I don't have the
Yeah.
DDA.
Yeah, that's what it says here, 12th day of December, 2022.
Mhm.
So I'm just going over that. So if it's something that you feel like it's not worth your time, I guess you could just state that.
Wouldn't say that wasn't worth my time. It's
Well,
just-
I mean, if it's not worth your time because nothing has moved forward, so let me just say that, sorry.
Well, I think if there's.
Nothing has gone forward, like you're at a stalemate.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
if that's something that I could update Mark, or I can update Steven or somebody else to like kind of just give a brief, or if I need to send an email to everybody, I can do that as well
Yeah.
too.
Okay. No, I don't have any more questions on this RFP.
Mr. Chair, just kind of a comment. We'd love to hear from each of the developers what they think, how often they think they should update us. And I think that's an agenda item later on, down in, so I hate to hold your feet to the fire,
Oh,
because,
that's fine.
it'll ultimately be up to us on how often we want somebody to come in. But I think there's discussions to be had if you're on track with everything that's in your DDA. Every project has a construction schedule, and if you're on track with that construction schedule, I don't know that somebody has to come in and say, yeah, we're on track with this schedule right here that you have. But if they're not on track, I would expect to see somebody every month telling us why.
Thank you, that's why I'm saying this.
Yeah.
Commissioner, the other thing too, we want to protect you as well. So if there's something that's not happening on the city level,
Yeah.
We're here to help you, so.
Well, that was one of the other things too, is part of this, RFP was out of my control. I didn't have control over the demo. I didn't have control over the structure or the engineers. So there was a portion of this that I didn't have, direction, and I couldn't finish my construction drawings until I had that, wrapped up, so.
That's why I think it would be beneficial to us to hear this, because that's the first I've heard of that. And I totally understand that,
Mhm.
totally get that, I totally see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Cooper.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks, guys.
We got to hear from Amano a little bit earlier in the evening, and the next presentation is with Dean from DeChase. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you. It's great to see everyone again. I do get the opportunity to present in front of you a couple times during the last 4 years. I actually had the opportunity to go back and kind of do some historicals on this exciting project. I will talk briefly about the question in regards to reporting, because I do think communication is important, and we do provide actually a monthly report with our submission for funding associated with public funding going towards this project. Not always a heavy lift. Sometimes it's a single quick document or a conversation with Mr. Hilty or Steven in regards to what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think communication is important, and happy to come down here, and sometimes coming down here and you guys get to hear good stuff, sometimes it's not so good. But I do believe in communication is very important. So, again, always appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to this group about what has gone on and where we are right now, which is very exciting in regards to having members come by the project today, so we can actually show off all the work that this community has done over the past couple of years and kind of the fruition of completing the project. I'm not sure exactly how this works. Just push the button? Any side? Okay, great. What I'd like to do, because some of you haven't been a part of this project since it started over 4 years ago, an initial kind of process, but also even before that, we were going back through some historical information and found first conversations about a hotel, a part of this group, was at about 2010 that we could find. So it's been going on for over 14 plus years, and on a focus on trying to get a hotel into downtown. We are not a hotel developer, and as part of our original submission, we let everyone know that we're not a hotel developer. I'm going to come back to that in the future. But in 2016, the property that is now being built as the Tillion was acquired by the Urban Renewal Agency. In 2018, it was awarded to another development group that planned on putting a hotel there, ultimately found out that it wasn't a viable option for the site, and ultimately gave the property back. We were lucky enough to win the RFP that was put out in 2020. We weren't lucky to roll that right into a pandemic, but we were lucky enough to work with a very good group in the city and the Urban Renewal Agency to work through a process to figure out what was best for the community at that time. What I wanted to point out was our original proposal actually included some stuff in it that ultimately, in working with the urban renewal agency in the city, it was decided it wasn't the right time to bring those teams to the table. The most important thing that a lot of people are talking about right now are parking. We actually prescribed on building a parking garage as part of this project, and also including housing around the parking garage. And then as part of a phase 2, we talked about adding more housing to the project or a hotel. Over time, and working with the urban renewal agency and some outside influence and the city, we adjusted the plans accordingly. If it worked. I don't know what to do. Okay. So the picture, I don't know, you guys can kind of see what's going on. The picture on the left was part of our original proposal. And so you'll see in the back part of that is a parking garage that's wrapped by housing. And in the foreground, that's a green colored to go with Winter Wonderland. The green color was actually proposed to be a hotel or additional housing, the phase 2. Again, working through with the Urban Renewal Agency and getting information, we adjusted the plans accordingly and moved the future phase 2 to where it is currently located and designed what is currently on the right-hand side. So from January 2020 until July 2021, caveat, it was during a pandemic, and it did cause delays throughout the construction industry. We proceeded forward in starting the project. So what I want to note on this, and this is ultimately what has been approved through both design review and with this committee, the movement of the hotel from where it was originally located, which was kind of wrapped around Burns, to the current location, really came as a recommendation from a group that I believe even brought forward Western Hospitality, that we worked with for a while to figure out what's the best location to put a hotel. Ultimately, they decided on where it currently is located, and our plan is phase 2 because of the location to parking. And so we adjusted our plans accordingly to move the hotel back to that location and then move forward on what's considered phase 1, which hopefully you all get to come and enjoy tonight, and walk around for 140 plus residential units, 7,500 square feet of ground floor retail, amenity space and others. Side note, we do have a lease on one of the retail spaces, and we're about to sign a lease on the second space, leaving about 1,600 square feet within the building. Very exciting. I'd like to tell you about both of those that are a lease or going to be a lease, but I'm going to keep it quiet until I let the tenants kind of make a big announcement. As most of you know, we said we're not a hotel developer, but we're happy to work with you and go through a process to find a hotel developer and or a hotel operator that might be interested in developing at this property. So we engaged a third-party group called Embarcadero out of the Portland market to cast a wide net to find a group that would come in and be interested in either a joint venture or a full development to operations, or we would develop it for them. Ultimately, through that process, there were 2 groups that were very focused on wanting to come into this market. One of those groups ultimately submitted a proposal out of Colorado, which I'll come back in the future and later in these slides and talk about. And one of them was Obi Hospitality, or Obi's company. I actually known Obi and the Obi family for over 35 years, so it was very exciting to see that they wanted to come into this market. And I was very excited to see that they might want to come to this site. Ultimately, they elected not to give us a proposal on the site and provided some insights on why they didn't want to. Ultimately, as we'll talk about in a little bit, they decided there was another location that would work better for a hotel in downtown Caldwell. We're all in support of them coming into this market because they think they're a very good operator, and we think they would bring a lot to this community. And again, with our history of working with them, we think they would work very well with what we've brought to downtown. Just after that presentation, an RFP came out for a second site for a hotel. This is ultimately the location where Obi provided their response to, where hopefully we all get to enjoy a hotel being built in the future. Again, I think they're a very good partner, and I think they would bring a lot into downtown Caldwell. The blurb on the right is a little bit about what they had proposed, if those of you who may have not been a part of the process of selecting them. And then the visual on the left is to give some context in regards to the 2 locations. One, of course, next to the project that we've completed. And then the other one that was ultimately where the city went out with an RFP and Obi was selected to do their future project. With that said, do you have those documents? With that said, we still have 2 groups that are interested in building a hotel in downtown. And we're very excited about both of them. We have worked with Raymond Management Group, thank you, Raymond Management Group on the right, on a project, and are looking at multiple locations throughout the Intermountain Northwest. I have a letter from them that I'd like to give you a copy of, if that's all right.
Thank you.
And we don't have to read through the whole letter, but I can give you some of the highlights. They're a very successful hotel operator, developer. They've done projects in 13 different states. They currently own and or operate 41 of those. That's not the breadth of all of their projects. They have built and then sold some of those and do not operate some of those. But they do have a great experience in the ability and financial wherewithal to build projects in many different types of the country. This brings us to a situation that we're going to have to come to a conclusion on collectively for what's best for Caldwell. So ultimately, in talking with both the Raymond Group, or as pointed out in the letter that you have, in short, they said, this is great, we really are interested in learning more about Caldwell, but we're not interested if there's going to be more than one hotel, and more than one hotel in downtown, because ultimately they would cannibalize each other. Additionally, OB Hospitality, in no short order, would say, we would be interested, but if there's another hotel in downtown, we would go ahead and not proceed. Actually just got off the phone with Brian Obie, who reiterated his excitement about coming and building a project here, but also letting me know that we are moving forward with a hotel that he would not be interested in proceeding. With that said, we are in a situation now, and we've continually talked about how do we resolve a situation where we're being asked to build a hotel on a site that ultimately is in our DDA to proceed with, and we agree to that, and or do we look and focus on what I would call a bird in hand with a great operator in OB? We would respectfully recommend this group allow us to work with staff to find a solution that will allow for OB to move forward on their great project and allow us to build a temporary parking facility until such time as we can actually develop the property on phase 2. I'd like to point out, if we weren't required to build a hotel and there wasn't a phase 2, we would have moved forward on one project. As we all can understand, one project is more cost effective than trying to do two over a certain amount of time. So we would have proceeded with one simple project and not have moved forward with two options or two projects. With that, I'm excited to have you guys come tour the project. I'm happy to stand and answer any questions.
Thank you, Dean. Mr. Doty.
So what type of parking structure, because you do have my interest now, because I've been one of the most adamant and vocal about having the hotel, but I've listened to what you said. So what are you looking at for a parking structure?
We're not going to build a parking structure. One, it wouldn't be feasible on that site. I'm happy to help with a parking structure.
Just ground parking then?
Ultimately, in conversations with staff and others inside of the city, their demand for parking, and I think it's actually noted in a city document that this is part of a parking plan for the greater downtown. We'd love to participate in having this property as a surface parking lot until such time as its value and or need in the community would make it better for redevelopment. And we could put a timeline associated with that so everyone kind of knows, hey, by some time in the future, we've all agreed that this property will be redeveloped. But right now, unless we proceed with a hotel on the site and OB will likely step away, we don't see a viable option to move forward to do a development on this site.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Doty.
So you would maintain control of the property, is that what you're saying? And if you charge for that, your company or who you represent would collect the fees and profits off of that property, is that correct, or?
Happy to talk about it with staff and this group in regards to what's best for the community and how best to use that site until such time it can be developed. I'm not a parking lot czar.
Me either.
So, but ultimately, everyone's hearing it and feeling it. There's a need for parking downtown, and, you know, ultimately when more parking is taken away for another development, again, a great development with a great hotel operator, we're hoping to help provide a solution that can bridge the gap until it can be developed and there's a better parking solution.
Well, I would certainly welcome those conversations. As you know, we've spent a lot of money on that piece of property to get it ready to go. So if we can come to some sort of agreement on that, I'm certainly willing to sit down and listen to the proposals or whatever agreements may come from that, so.
Great.
Mr. Allgood?
I know you don't have a crystal ball, but future, if you had your choice, and you say future development on that piece of property, what does that look like? Are you talking business, residential? I mean, and I'm just asking you for your professional opinion.
Sure. I think if we are successful leasing the current project that we all get to tour later tonight, and we get comfortable with what it costs, but what ultimately the returns that we're able to provide back to our investors, we're gonna be more comfortable moving forward with a similar product next door. But that's not to say that, you know, a new opportunity comes around 2 years from now that we're focused on housing now that may become another mixed-use opportunity. It may become, you know, people have said condo. I've heard condo a lot. Is it a condo project that you're building? It could be something of that sort. In terms of a timeline, I think if I were in your shoes, I think you'd want to make sure that it happens in a certain amount of time, because we're all well invested into that area for something to happen, to keep my feet against the fire, to make sure it's not going to be 20 years down the road. You know, let's not make sure that the leash isn't so far out that we don't have some controls over it. And I would love it if this group was sitting there the next time I have to come forward to explain the history of what we're trying to build, and know that we've all agreed to what's best to move forward with. So whatever that timeline is, I don't know in terms of crystal ball, but I would make sure that it's, you know, 5 to 10 years. Let's hold it in a certain amount of time. As this community continues to grow, I want to invest more here. I want to see more successes. I want to make sure what happens next to the $40 million investment that we put in downtown supports what we've done thus far and works with that.
Mr. Chair, can I follow up just a little bit? Sure. We've had a lot of discussion about parking garages, and you maybe slipped up and had a Freudian slip, whatever. But some of the things we've discussed is a private-public partnership for parking, for a parking structure. Does your company have any involvement in that kind of thing? Is there something to talk about in that area?
Yes. Let me back up. I wouldn't build a parking garage on this site.
Right.
Mostly because it's hugely inefficient.
Right.
We're building our second parking garage downtown Boise right now. Both public-private partnerships. Both use the resources that the public and the private have to maximize the investment. And I actually went back and looked at our original proposal and the financial structure for a parking garage that was going to be part of the original project. They could still be viable today. Of course, we've got to tweak some of the numbers of what's changed over time. But I think we would love to help find a solution for parking, because the ability for downtown to be successful, although it's an anchor, it's a need. And to be able to solve that problem is going to be very important for everyone that's invested in downtown. So we're happy to help the community however we best can to find that solution.
Good.
Any other questions? Good. Okay, thank you, Dean.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Takes us to our next presentation by Sean. TS Developments, the 501 Arthur site. Welcome.
I wanted to introduce Tom and Susie Bevan, and Tom Bevan III that was here last time. But I'm going to begin the presentation. If you have any questions for them, I guess we could bring them up here. But where we're at is obviously we're kind of novice as far as long as Tillian or anything like that. But TS appreciates the opportunity that we've been provided to build in Caldwell, and understands the weight of building a beautiful project down here. And we're going full speed ahead on that. Our evidence of financing has been approved. Our financing has been approved as well. And then now kind of where we're at in this project is there's a vacation of Arthur that we have to work through with the city. And so I think that is to be on the schedule for the city around March 19th. And that's kind of one of those things that's, you know, we don't control that. And so we're doing that. And I think we've ordered some soil testing, geotechnical testing for the site in the last few days. And I mean, we don't have a lot of updates other than that with this project. Regarding whether to be here monthly or not, I already dedicated to be here monthly last time, so I think that's fine. But Also, you know, for me, it's also, I get to hear from you guys on the other projects, so it's educational for me as well. So even if I don't have an update, I learn something, right? And maybe what you guys are thinking or wanting to do on projects generally. So I don't know if you have any questions. I mean, that's more or less our update right now.
Very good. Thank you, Sean. Questions for Mr. Baywa?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say thank you. I went through your RFP. Thank you for being here and seeing the value and showing up here as you said you would, and everybody else that's here went through it. I don't have any questions with it. It sounds like you're on your way.
Yeah, we're
thank you.
working diligently.
Thank
so.
you.
All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. That's the end of our update reports. It takes us into our new business, and the first item is to consider a resolution authorizing the acceptance of the Urban Renewal Agency audit from September 30th from Ide Bailey. Welcome, Raylene.
So, I know Bobby didn't go over too much, but I just wanted to have you guys turn to page 10 in the audit. I won't make you turn to too many pages, but this is just their statement of activities. And what's interesting about this, our total revenues, because it compares fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23. And our total revenues, as you can see, increased by just over $5 million. And our total expenditures also increased by about $5 million. So Urban Renewal, we are processing more and more, and we're, as the closeout happened this last year in fiscal year 23. Our cash balance, you'll see in that first line, right under that paragraph, we ended with an increase in cash balance from fiscal year 22 of $9,994,987. So, and then that next paragraph where it says long-term debt, it'll say that we paid off our last 2 revenue bonds, so we had 0 debt at the end of fiscal year 23 as well. So those are just little things I wanted to point out in the financial statements. This is my first time doing these financial statements. They were not too bad. So I really hope that we, you know, as we add urban renewal areas, you know, it'll be easier, but I doubt it will. So that's all I had.
Questions for Raylene?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Warwick?
No question, but a comment. I really appreciate how you managed our cash to increase our interest income. That was very helpful. We really appreciate you thinking outside the box and doing what you can to get that in there so that we could pay off all of our bonds and be debt-free. It's great. Thanks.
Good job, Raylene.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Mr. Moore.
a question, but I thank you for going through that page right there. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why I didn't get an electronic version of any of this, but just seeing this and hearing that. So looking at this, yeah, good job. Thank you for increasing our interest income. I mean, that's not an easy feat to do in some of this raising rate environment and things are going up. So I know of a bank that would probably love to give you a job offer on something like that. So good job.
Hey, careful.
Yeah, you've had a lot to digest and then you come up with this. So I'll go through it if I have any questions, which I think I do just on this part of it. I'll get in touch with you. All right? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Raylene. Do we have a motion in regard to this resolution?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Warwick?
I move we accept the Urban Renewal Agency audit as of September 30th, 2023.
Okay, we have a motion for acceptance and a second by Mr. Doty. Any other questions? Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Ovid,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Porter,
Yes.
Commissioner Doty.
Yes.
Very good. Takes us to our second action item. That's to consider a resolution authorizing the approval and execution of the certificate of completion for 7th and Main, the Tillian Project Phase 1. Mr. Hildy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Chase, for the Tillian project, has submitted a request for a certificate of completion. This is a provision in the DDA. The DDA imposes restrictions and requirements on the developer. Many of those restrictions and requirements are terminated when their project is complete. And so that's really what this is. And again, we're talking about, of course, phase one only. So the Tillian apartment complex meets the requirements in the DDA for being complete, and that is where the city has issued a certificate of occupancy for all of the residential units, and a certificate of occupancy for the commercial shells. Those will be finished out with tenant improvements. Dean was talking about having tenants. So they are released from requirements that prohibit the sale of the property. They prohibit any sort of changes to it, to the approved design. They require that the corporate structure remain in place. They require that Dean remain critically involved as the project goes forward. I think they're gonna, I think, own and maintain this. That's part of their portfolio. But that requirement would no longer be there. And that restriction is basically eliminated as a result of the project being complete, meaning they've done essentially what they were supposed to do under the DDA. There are a couple of requirements that remain for a longer period of time. One of them are general anti-discrimination provisions. That's part of the deed restriction when the property was transferred to them. The other is the in lieu taxes provision. So the property cannot be converted to, well, let me say it a different way. If the property is converted to some use that was tax exempt, then the owners would still be required to pay money in lieu of taxes, because the urban renewal purpose, right, is to grow the tax base. That is something that will continue, I believe, for 20 years, and then will expire after that period. So essentially, staff is telling you that the time has come to issue the certificate of completion for phase one. I've approved the form that they've submitted for signature, which I think was in your packet. If you have any questions, I would try to answer them.
Mr. Doty?
Mr. Hilty, I just want to make sure this doesn't affect the property next door by giving the certificate, because of the pending discrepancies that we have, but maybe we'll get somewhere with that. I just want to ensure that that doesn't let them off the hook for phase two.
Yeah, they submitted this for phase one only to me to review a couple of weeks ago. That was my number one criteria. Make sure that it applied only to phase one. That's clear in the legal description. That's clear in the language. I think I put it in there about 4 times.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Overkill?
I think it's perfect.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Hilty. Mr. Hilty, has anybody went through the building? Has anybody physically walked through it, inspected, went through a checklist? I mean, I know we've seen everything that's been submitted, but who's actually looked it over and eyeballed it?
Sure. Under the agreement, that is tied to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. So we're relying on what effectively is a third party to the agreement, the city of Caldwell, to do that. I communicated with Rob this week. He verified that the building department has issued those certificates. So the process was, the completing of the inspections during construction and the final issuance of those certificates.
Okay, so Rob's issued certificates of completion. It's been gone through. Somebody's walked through it. It's been inspected. Is that right, city?
Rob's right there.
Rob's here. It's the standard building official inspection.
Oh, I didn't see him. I'm sorry.
Right, Rob? It's the standard building
Certificate of occupancy.
Right?
Yeah, so they inspect it numerous times, of course, during instruction for electrical and HVAC and those plumbing and all that. When it's done, they do an inspection, and that produces the certificate of occupancy. So that's the process we're relying on.
Okay, so I guess we're having an after hours there, so if we see something that doesn't go on right, we want to call Rob, right?
Too late. Yeah, call Rob. That's
Your blue tape and your green tape.
Yeah, right? Thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thanks, Mark. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, real quickly, before you move on, can I say something? The TS Development people, I didn't get a say. I did review their letter, evidence of financing, and I thought it was a very good piece of a document. I thought it was pretty well put together. So their lender did submit a very good letter. So I didn't bring that up. So if we can get that on the record, that it looked good.
Yep.
Yeah, and thank you for that review.
Okay, what is the disposition of the commissioners in regard to this resolution approving?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I move we authorize the approval and execution of the certificate of completion for Seventh and Main Developer LLC Phase One only.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion by Ms. Warwick, second by Mr. Garcia. Would the secretary call the roll?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Ogden?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Very good. Action item number 3, to consider invoices for payment. And welcome again, Raylan.
Good job, Raylan.
Okay,
We'll see.
we've got quite a few payments today, so I'll just go down the list. 269,000 for Project 4, 18,900 for the February economic contributions, 8,000 for the admin services for fiscal year 24, $1,471.89 for Project 16, $23,271 for Project 10, $17,045 for Project 13, $334.68 for irrigation assessments, $151.88 for property taxes, $504,017.11 for Project 1, $263,789 and 16 cents for Project 9, $6,435 for January attorney services, and $247.26 for public hearing, for a total of $866,931.98. I will just make a note that, for the D-Chase billing, this is not the final, billing. There is one bill that we do have left, so.
Mr. Doty?
So on Project 4, the Expo building, do you have it off the top of your head, how much we've actually contributed to the Expo building over all the years?
So on their project list, which is in your packet too.
Yes.
So, we budgeted $2,477,000, and essentially we spent all of that except for $334,000 of that, so,
So we've contributed 2.4 million to the Expo building.
yeah.
We're paying to rent it here
So.
on 2 events, so. Also, I'm just curious about, we had to cancel the one project to make everything square,
So.
so how are your numbers looking now?
Yes, so you will hear from me on that next month. We went through the projects, it was just too late on Wednesday when we were trying to get the agenda out, so you will hear a full project update from me with budgets. Obviously, it's on the project list, but there are a couple of budgets for projects that are going over budget, so we're gonna do a full accounting of them, and you will hear a full with resolution from me next month on that.
Thank
So,
you.
it was just a timeliness issue, so I apologize.
Good job, Raylan. Had to get mine in.
Chairman, question
Moore.
for Raylan.
Mhm.
Raylan, so, yeah, I had a same question on Project 4. How much have we totally put into the Fair Expo building? My next question, Project 10, the Kimball North Complex.
Mhm.
This 23,271 is, how deep are we into those distributions? I mean, what's the total on that?
So the total project budget was that 442,242. So this will zero out, that last payment will zero out the rest of that budget.
So that brings us up to, after this goes out, this check goes in the mail, 442.
Yeah, we have spent the entirety of that budget, the 23,000. So once that 23,271, we have spent the remaining of that budget
Okay.
for Project 10.
Project 13, 21st Avenue parking.
That one is over budget. That will be one that I will be bringing back to you next month.
Thinking
So-
it's gonna go away someday, but
The electrical, I will tell you, and our journeyman electrician will tell you, electrical parts are expensive, and they are way, like 50% markup on them. They are just going absurdly expensive. And every time we order them, they're more expensive. And so that's what's just nickel and diming us on that one, so.
Okay, thank you for these updates. That's all I have.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a motion in regard to the invoices for payment?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
I make a motion that we pay them.
Very good.
Second.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Ms. Warwick. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner August?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes. Takes us directly into our treasurer report.
So, of the first report, which is the bank reconciliation, you will see that our tax deposits were $120,697.12. Of that, $56,113.27 came from the east area. Those are past due. Those are not current year tax increment funds. Those are past due funds. And then $64,583.85 are from the north area of current year. They could be both current year and past, but that's what that is. We also received $11,623.25 in interest, slowly creeping down, but it's still up there. And then in LGIP, we received $3,617.30 in interest. I will say with LGIP, we haven't talked about that at all very much. I can transfer that money at any time we need it. It just sits there as a savings account, so one-day transfer. So those funds are accessible at any time. It's just sitting there. So yeah. And then on our financial overview, you can kind of see both budget to actual and then the cash breakdown of how those are spent. And I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to congratulate her on the positive cash flow and the interest and working that. So I remember when you did that, and we still have a little bit of a benefit from that. So, good job.
Any other good news for Raylene?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion that we approve the monthly cash reconciliation reports.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Ms. Warwick. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner August?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes. Okay, very good. Now to our project list.
And here we are to the project list. A lot of these projects are working down. The biggest one is going to be that Ustick Road widening. A lot of that does have to do with the Indian Creek Bridge over the Ustick Road widening, which I've talked to Rob about. So that's but most of these projects are slated to be completed this spring/summer, so are in process or are almost done. So next month you'll have a full update of project budgets. We're working through that. So that's kind of what I have for projects.
Okay,
If you
any
have
questions on the project list? Okay, very good. Thanks, Raylene. Takes us to our economic development reports. Mr. Jenkins, welcome.
Commissioners, I'm gonna breeze through this knowing that we have some folks here that want to talk on some of the topics that are listed below me, so apologize for speaking quickly, but I'm always happy to answer questions, so let's get through this here. So I've got Project Magic, and under miscellaneous updates, they're a national restaurant group that is interested in multiple sites in Caldwell. They're primarily focused on Central Caldwell and East Caldwell at this point. They are anticipating a future location within the next year and a half. Project Star is also a national restaurant operator. They have a strong interest in our community. They're reviewing sites and planning a location in our community within the next 2 years. Within these two projects, I just want to mention that the operative word here is national, so we're getting a lot of national groups' attention at this point from a retail commercial standpoint, which is something that I've been working to achieve since I started here in 2019. Project Fun is family fun concept interested in locating in Caldwell. They're reviewing options to build a facility or occupy an existing building. Project Spartan, they're an outdoor apparel brand. They're back in the mix. I talked to them maybe a couple years ago. They've come back around. They're interested in a building that can support retail and warehouse space. They're looking in East Caldwell, such as areas like Sky Ranch and North Ranch, and also within our downtown core. Project Bingle is a big box retailer that has narrowed down their search to one main site. We're working closely with them to provide additional city-related details as they prepare for a large-scale project. Project Paces, conversations are very productive. They have located a site and are working through a purchase agreement with the current owners. This big box user will allow greater shopping opportunities for our residents. Project Spot, they're visiting Caldwell this week. They're considering multiple sites in East Caldwell and have a strong interest in this area. The Dome Church, and I mentioned this during a little bit of my discussion with Urban Renewal, they're working on a development, the developer's working on a project at the Dome Church. They're hoping to develop a site that would bring 152 affordable units to the area. These will be workforce housing units that will extend affordability. Project Black is a national drink group. They're looking to do a build-to-suit project near North Ranch. Project Springfield, retail group that is closing in on a location in East Caldwell. This site will add to the vibrancy and activity taking form in the area. And then the amphitheater project, Lexor Investments was approved to move forward with discussions for a development and disposition agreement. We are working toward that objective. They are hoping to bring a large-scale facility here to the community to add to our entertainment options that we have for our local citizens here. And then department activities. We're finalizing plans to hire a consultant for our proposed Canyon County Ag Tech facility. And if you recall, this was a result of a grant that was received from Capital Matrix in the form of $25,000. So this consultant would focus on fundamental research, financial dynamics, sustainability, and identify potential public-private partnerships. North Caldwell Urban Renewal District, Project 26 is finalized. They finalized their traffic impact study, and they're currently looking to get that reviewed by ITD. And then we have strong interest in North Caldwell from smaller users. They're roughly 5 to 15 acres is the range that seems to be the most popular right now. We remain confident that as more land annexes, interest will continue into 2024. And then downtown updates, Tillian was here with Dean to share updates. They're working with some great operators for that location. One thing I've recognized is that when we have Class A retail space, it certainly helps to pique the interest of users, particularly from the Ada County area. 619 Main Street, they're proposing a restaurant and office space, and updates are happening now. Facade improvements, elevator, et cetera, are happening to that building. Project Richard, I now have an update that's listed in my report. Maybe I'll just wait to share that because I want to give you guys some, I want you to hold the phone there, so I won't give away all I'm going to share. So I'll hold tight on that one. And then lastly, additional updates. The U.S. economy delivered strong economic growth in the second half of 2023. This was quite a surprise from the standpoint of our gross domestic product. We increased, the U.S. did, from the 3.3% annualized rate in the fourth quarter, which is well above the 2% that was forecasted by the economic experts. And that actually was backed by, in the quarter three, we had 4.9% growth. So again, we just had dramatic economic growth that we didn't anticipate for the final 2 months or 2 quarters of this year, or this last year, sorry, we're in 2024 now, 2023. 2024 output is expected to rise by 3.1%, and then inflation is currently at 3.4%, just above the 2% target. And then lastly, interest rates are anticipated to drop. Every major bank is forecasting interest rate cuts by the middle of the year. With that, that is all I have. Hopefully that was fast enough for you.
Okay, questions for Stephen? Very good, thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Great job, Stephen.
Thank you.
Okay, we get some update reports, and first one is from Jeff Dancer in the Real Theater Plaza property. Welcome.
Well, hey, how are you guys? I guess I better start. Good job, Braylon. Yeah, so my wife and I actually bought the Trolley Square spaces from Gardner Company back in December of 2019. It's been a struggle to get it filled, as far as others have mentioned and stuff. A lot of the complaints that I get when we have people coming in looking at, we've received 5 LOIs since 2019 when we purchased it. Only one of them is stuck. That was Happy Teriyaki. Great tenant. It's in a 10-year lease. And even Jong even said when she first got it, she was a little concerned about the parking, but it's proven to be actually one of their busier locations. So we try to use that as the feedback for anybody else looking at it. Unfortunately, the other 4 LOIs kind of fell through. I think we get a little interest, people calling, asking on the available space, and then also the green space there. One thing that I've always been told was make sure you fill your vacant space before you go build another vacant space that you have to worry about filling. So I will say the parking is a concern. Everybody that seems to, out of everybody that we've talked to over the years, it always comes back to the parking. Where can I, especially for food sources and stuff, where do I get a park? So, we have entered into, a new relationship with White Leisure here recently, looking at trying to explore some other options, get that existing space filled, and so we can move on to, a couple other potential, opportunities to partner with on the green space. But, that's where we're at right now with it, so. We have been, working with Ophelia, keeping her posted with what's going on with it. And, up to date, like I said, that actually green space, we keep it up and allow for any usage. I know when there's things going on downtown, quite frequently, people are calling, asking to utilize the space, which is more than welcome anytime. So, plan is just to keep it beautiful down there and for people to use, so.
Thank you very much. Questions? Mr. Allgood?
Yes, so in your advertisement of the green space so far,
Mhm.
is it a build-to-suit situation? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, we have the build to suit, so we actually there's a sign out, we've, gone through, done rendering drawings, tried to match the original plan from Gardner to model the buildings, but also added like a rooftop terrace idea onto it. So the signage has been there, we just have not got, like I said, everybody, the main thing they call is where are they gonna park? So that's been the biggest hurdle we've encountered so far, so.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question
Mr.
for
Moore?
Mr. Dancer.
Mhm.
Thanks for coming here tonight,
Uh-huh.
by the way. Considering, what happened at the Boise Airport with that failed structure and those 4 families and the loss and everything, is the property, the green space there, is everything insured?
Yes,
Is there
yes, yeah, we
insurance,
have
not just-
insurance on it all, yes, and that has been, we have insurance on the building and the green space and everything.
Okay.
And like I said, yeah, that has been whenever somebody calls and asks to use it and stuff, they've had book fairs and different events and stuff, and then set up booths on it and stuff, and that's always been a concern, but it is insured, yes. And we don't charge for the use of it, we just, like I said, utilize the space, it's a good spot.
Yeah,
So.
thank you. I have one more question for Mr. Dancer. What do you think would help, that Happy Teriyaki spot there? What could help you, with maybe getting some more interest in that? Is there we got a couple of city council people here.
Mhm.
I'm interested in hearing what you have to say, what your comments are. What do you think?
Like I said, the biggest hurdle we've had is just, we've had multiple restaurants, breweries, sports pub. Honestly, I think that would be great location for it. But everybody just comes back to where they park. And we try to steer them back towards the parking along the railroad tracks. Try to, you come down, people, I've had to park all the way over at the courthouse and to walk in and stuff for the lights and all that. People will walk, and that's what you try to convey to people. People will walk to get to it. And then, like I said, with Happy Teriyaki, even conveying to them that she's, what she had said after they were open for a few months, she says, this is one of our busiest locations. Well, that just proves that people were willing to walk. It's just, unfortunately, like I said, it's their business. I don't know how to convince,
Right.
some of these different businesses that it's worth the gamble, because I do believe it is, and that's why we purchased the property. But unfortunately, like I said, it has been a challenge. So.
Okay, yeah, that's I think that's it. If there's anything in the future you think that comes up, I would be interested to hear it here. Thank you again for coming here.
Yep, thank you.
Much appreciated.
Great job, Raylan.
There you go.
So Mr. Dancer also kind of gave us a update on the spaces next to Happy Teriyaki, so. Let's see. Steve, you want to talk about the OB?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll
about
skip right down
anything.
to Ovi. I think,
Just not be there.
the other update report was erroneously placed on the agenda, but, Downtown Hotel, Ovi, we've been in, frequent communication with Ovi companies regarding their project at downtown Caldwell. Really what they're doing now is they're talking to potential restaurant operators that would occupy space. As you may recall, with their RFP the proposal that they submitted on the RFP, they had considered a restaurant on the first floor and then a rooftop, restaurant operator as well. So they're looking at different uses there. The main thing that I took away from our recent conversation was that they're working on branding, which is very keen to their operation. They have a couple brands that they utilize in the Eugene area, and the focal point here is to blend elements of our community into the brand of the hotel. So they are working on that aspect of it from a marketing standpoint. Really, that's the latest objective from the OB project. But it is moving forward. Things are looking good. They remain optimistic about the project.
Very good. Questions for Stephen on that?
Yes, please.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm ahead of where we're at. Have we entered into negotiations of what it's going to cost them to occupy that city space?
Not yet. Mm-mm.
And how much time were they given to work toward the DDA? I know that it was an accelerated timeline, but was it 9 months or a year?
Yeah, approximately 12 months. So yeah, just a year.
Great. You want to take us to the next one?
Yes, and I am grateful that I have two participants online here that have hung out during the entire meeting. Really appreciate their time and participation in advance. Megan Conrad is with us, and Brent Tolman. Megan is with a law firm out of Boise. They've been working closely with urban renewal legislation and proposed legislation. So I felt that it would be helpful to have her input. And Brent is actually out of Jerome County and has also followed this legislation closely. We're fortunate with Caldwell to have great partners also in Meridian. Ashley Squires, who oversees their urban renewal agency there, she has kept me informed with the proposed changes. So I'm going to pass it off, if I may, to Megan and Brent to share more updates about some of the legislative changes that pertain to urban renewal.
Well, this is Megan. Thank you so much for having me this evening. Do you have video on your end? If so, I can turn on my camera, but I wasn't sure what you see. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. We're looking for a heads up from our tech person. Yeah, he gave us a thumbs up, so you can turn your camera on.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, I guess maybe I can just kick it off quickly, and then we'll turn it over to Brent Tolman. So Brent Tolman is the current president of the Redevelopment Association of Idaho, which is a group that represents urban renewal agencies throughout the state. The focus of the organization really is on education, and as part of that role has also transitioned a little bit into tracking legislative changes on urban renewal. I am an attorney. I do work with urban renewal agencies and work closely with the Redevelopment Association of Idaho as well. As you know, each year there is some type of urban renewal legislation that is presented, and this year looks to be no different. In terms of, where we're at, it's important to note that the draft legislation that you may have seen that is being circulated, what we have in our possession is currently a draft of potential legislation. It is not an RS, which is the formal designation of a bill that gets entered into a committee for print. So it's very early stages, which makes the conversation a little bit challenging, but I do think it gives us a good idea as to what we may be seeing refined and or as we move into the print hearing phase of these bills. It's from a policy perspective, we're really struggling to understand what are the policy objectives here, what are the issues that we are trying to correct. and made a little bit more challenging is that there is no group or entity or person who has used the existing urban renewal tool or local development act tool or CID authority that were invited to the table to review these proposals and provide comment on them in real time. So essentially what we have is a proposed Local Infrastructure Development District Act, which is somewhat similar in form and based on community infrastructure districts, which are also somewhat related to local improvement districts and business improvement districts, which essentially take a geographic area and allow the assessment on real property to support debt service on a bond to be used to fund certain eligible infrastructure costs. And the thought is that this Local Infrastructure Development District tool, LIDD, could potentially act as a replacement for urban renewal in greenfield development. So what we all refer to as economic development type projects as opposed to, say, an urban downtown revitalization project. This LIDD tool would really serve as a replacement. You would no longer need to use urban renewal as a tool to support greenfield development. And now the draft of that LIDD is coupled with the proposed amendments to the urban renewal statute, which in theory would preclude urban renewal from being used for agricultural or undeveloped area. And then also further restrain the use of the tool in terms of what revenues flow to an urban renewal agency, really requiring overlapping taxing districts to opt in to a new project area. I think some of the key takeaways that we all know just from practicing in this area, but there have been significant constraints on the tool over the last decade, including limiting the duration of a revenue allocation area to 20 years, limiting how revenues flow to a revenue allocation area. There's a number of levies that are accepted from the formula. Limited the ability of how we can use revenue allocation funds. There are limitations on the abilities to fund construction of certain municipal buildings or multi-use stadium projects, which sometimes becomes a challenge when we talk about making enhancement or improvements to large parks. We also now restrained in project areas that are stood up. There are some limitations on what types of projects can generate revenue for a revenue allocation area. For example, the Meta project, with allocating that certain value upon meeting certain thresholds to the base as opposed to still being an increment. So when we talk about these additional considerations that are being discussed, we're really no longer talking about a scalpel approach, and it is the death by 1,000 cuts of the statute. And what is being discussed really could be more of a meat cleaver. So I'm happy to transition over to Brent and get his thoughts, but those are kind of my high-level summary.
Thanks, Megan. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having us on to chat with you about this legislation. Megan is very eloquently spoken regarding the legislation and its impacts. And I'm going to tell you that it's just very, very poor public policy. It's very draconian language that will essentially is a death knell for urban renewal. As Megan stated, it's death by 1,000 cuts. It's extremely limiting in urban renewal districts and how they can be utilized. I'll try and not share my extreme frustrations. This has been an ongoing attack for a number of years. I was in a legislative committee hearing a couple of years ago where a legislator said he would like to get rid of urban renewal, but he didn't have the votes to do that at the time, and has continually attacked urban renewal. And I don't recall if it was that same committee hearing or a subsequent committee hearing. he called the board members of Urban Renewal Agency thieves because board members aren't elected and yet they're spending taxpayer dollars. And what he fails to acknowledge, I think he understands, but fails to acknowledge, is that ultimately, plans that are developed by Urban Renewal Agency boards, such as yours, are approved by city councils, or in the case of a few areas in the state, by county commissioners. So the accountability is the word I'm looking for, of those projects being approved by city councils and or elected officials, that does exist with Urban Renewal. I believe he's aware of that, but I believe he chooses not to acknowledge it. We're really concerned that, as Megan said, this legislation has not been put on the agenda as an RS yet, which is the first step to it getting a hearing. We have reason to believe that will be happening soon, sometime probably within the next 5 to 10 days at the latest. And when that happens, folks will see how really bad this legislation is and what it will do. The difference between the local improvement district that Megan said they're proposing as part of this legislation and Urban Renewal is Urban Renewal is oftentimes the only local incentive that communities have to help with economic development. And by taking that tool away, it will impact significantly across the state economic development activities that are taking place. I would venture to say that based on what I've heard from your discussions this evening and the projects that you have going, that even though those may have been classic blighted areas, if you will, because there is an economic development component to them, the way I understand the legislation, the way we've looked at it and read through it, is even in a blighted area, urban renewal cannot be used for an economic development project to restore a blighted area, which is kind of an oxymoronic way of doing things. But that's the interpretation, is that it would severely restrict that. The other piece that is really concerning is it would limit the use of urban renewal in any area where the district includes and the local improvement district piece to it, where there's any single family residential properties. It's been a few years since I lived up on Canyon Hill. Since I was about 7 when we moved from there, and that was a number of years ago. But I do have some familiarity with Caldwell, and I've been around there. I grew up in Nampa, and I work with several small communities across southern Idaho. And just to give you an example, in a downtown area to do a revitalization plan using urban renewal, it would be almost impossible to draw a district boundary where there's not single-family residences, particularly in the more rural communities outside of Boise and Meridian, and probably even some in Meridian. But for example, in Burley, where I live, we have businesses that are operating out of former residences. Right next door is a single-family residence. And then there may be a couple of businesses, again, operating out of former homes, and then 3 or 4 residential properties that currently are being used as such. And to draw a district boundary around that kind of stuff would be very cumbersome. Oftentimes, as you guys are probably aware, parcel boundaries extend to the center of the roadway. So how do you draw a boundary where you have to go to the center of the roadway on one parcel, and on the adjacent parcel you can incorporate the whole thing, and then the next one you have to skip part of it because it's the center of roadway? That's the type of language that's in the legislation as far as prohibiting uses of urban renewal where there's single family residences. Same thing with the local improvement district. It would be strictly for commercial and industrial type projects. If a residential property were to benefit from, say, extending sewer and water, you would have to do a cost segregation on what portion of that cost would be attributable to the commercial development, what portion would be attributable to the residential development, and only that portion attributable to the commercial industrial development would be an allowed expense under either use of the tool. Again, knowing that the limitation on urban renewal would eliminate the use of that for economic development projects. So if you haven't had a chance to see the legislation, you need to get a copy of it, and we can send that to Steve, and he can send that. I think, Steve, you may have a copy. We can share that. I encourage you to look at it. I will tell you that at the Association of Counties meeting a week ago, I was told this by a county commissioner at my Jerome County Urban Renewal Agency meeting on Monday, that this legislation was discussed. It was presented as increasing transparency on urban renewal, and yet none of the changes, the proposed changes in the legislation, have anything to do with reporting or transparency or accountability. It's simply, the changes simply are how to restrict the use of urban renewal and implement this new local improvement development district. I know that Ashley and Meridian has visited with a number of developers, as well as some of our other board members and other agencies throughout the state, with projects that have happened in the past in urban renewal areas, and pretty unanimously the opinion is, had it not been for urban renewal, those projects would not have happened, and the use of the LIDD tool, the local improvement development districts, that this legislation proposes, was not the answer to bringing those projects to the state of Idaho. One I'll give you an example of, people probably get tired of hearing about it, but it's a large example that affects not just a single city or a single county, but affects, at minimum, I will say 8 counties in southern Idaho and the state as a whole, and that's Chobani. Twin Falls agency visited with Chobani on this proposed legislation. Their response was they would not have come to Idaho without urban renewal, and the LIDD tool would not have benefited them in that construction project over there, which currently they employ 1,500 people. They use milk from more cows than the population of southern Idaho as a whole, and those cows are present primarily in southern Idaho. The supply chain is very, very local and very long, because when you start talking about dairies and you start talking about feed and veterinary services and automations for the dairies and the trucking of the milk and the trucking of the feed, and just on and on and on, it's very local and very long. Those 1,500 employees live throughout the 8-county area down here, and commute to Twin Falls, and consequently, each of those counties has benefited from Chobani by virtue of homes being sold, new demand for services in those communities. The cups that Chobani uses, that this plant uses, every single cup they use for their yogurt is produced in Burley. Fabrical, it was the name of the company when they came. It's since changed names. They would not have come had it not been for Chobani. Their sole purpose in coming was to provide those cups within a 35-mile radius of the plant. And so, and then ultimately the state has benefited from that by increased sales taxes. And one of the things that I contend is the elimination of urban renewal would result in the surplus that the state used this current year for property taxes, well, 23 when that was all approved, but the surplus that was used to provide property tax relief, that surplus would not have existed without economic development occurring across the state and providing additional revenues to the state. So it's not again, it's not good public policy, it's not good legislation, and we're adamantly opposed to its passage, and hope we can defeat it, if not in the House, at least in the Senate. So with that, I think we'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, folks. Any questions for our guests? I guess not. You've given us a whole bunch to think about. We appreciate your expertise and your time this evening and checking in with us. Thanks for being a resource, and thanks for being in the good fight with Stephen and Ophelia here in Caldwell. So,
Can I just ask?
Mr. Allgood, sure.
Yeah, does the association have any lobbyists or any help in this, in getting the word out? Because there needs to be a real educational push. Who's doing that?
We do. So our membership is comprised of about 33 out of the 44 agencies across the state. In our dues assessment, we do include a legislative portion of that we do hire Ben Broxham and Associates out of Boise as our lobbyist, and Ben's meeting and his staff are meeting with legislators on a regular basis, promoting the use of urban renewal and the benefits of it. We typically, and I'm gonna say a huge thank you to Elam & Burke, which is the law firm that Megan is with. They do a lot for renewal across the state, not only in their role as legal counsel to several agencies, but to the association. And because our membership is not as great as we would like, and the funds that we generate from that aren't as high as what we need, they often write off a portion of their services to the association on an annual basis. But we do have Ben Broxham on retainer, and we have Elam & Burke that really monitors these bills and provides an in-depth analysis on the impact of what they'll have on agencies and more importantly on the projects and developers and communities that we work with. So it's an ongoing battle, and one that we continually are striving to meet.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in quickly. You hit on a critical point. It really does turn into a grassroots effort in terms of making sure urban renewal agencies and cities are communicating with their legislative representatives and being able to at least let them know that you are the experts, you are the resource. And so when they have questions about how the tool is used in your community, that you can be there to present the case. I do think it's critically important as we move forward, and it will be every year, to have those that have benefited from the tool, those that are really impactful to your community, have them write letters to legislators, letting them know they understand that this draft legislation is out there, they have concerns, how this would or would not have worked for them. So yes, I think communication and regular communication is key, and that is what we are trying to actively relay to our memberships, is just get information out, make sure you're the expert for your legislative representatives, and just keep talking about it and educating. That's all we can do, I think.
Megan and Brent, thanks so much. We really appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment.
Mr. Moore?
Just living here my entire life, over 50 years, I couldn't imagine URA going away. Couldn't imagine this place being without some sort of URA help. Yeah, I have a commercial property. I pay into it. I will pay more into it. I'm bought into it. I support it. But this piece of legislation, I don't see where it's beneficial to anybody, in the long run.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. That takes us to our next item on the agenda. It's Ophelia and the economic report from downtown.
Perfect. Well, I won't keep you too long. I know we have Jean waiting for us. So just additional downtown updates. So Project Ben, we're still having a challenge with them identifying ideal locations for them. Project Juice, the build out was too costly. This was about $1 million build out, and So we're still continuing to look for space for those individuals. Project operator, this was a project that started back in 2022. This is Operator Coffee. They found a location at 3110 East Cleveland Avenue, Suite J1. They're retail roasting coffee, so they'll be shipping coffee. They will have a small retail space where you can all go and purchase some coffee, mugs, etc. Their product will also be in the news shields in the Meridian area. They originally came to us, like I've mentioned, back in 2022. Space was hard to identify because they were looking at leases under $10 a square foot at that time, which is really, really hard to find in Caldwell. So they did find they went into the incubator in Nampa and made their way back. They do love Caldwell, so they made their way back. And if you get a chance, stop by them. They are a veteran-owned business, so I also connected them with the Bikini Brew folks there, so I believe they carry their coffee as well. And some new projects, Project Round.
Celia?
Yep.
Excuse me. Could you give us a landmark, 3110 Cleveland?
So that's right next to Papa John's, that area.
Very good. Thank you.
On the boulevard there. New project, so Project Round, this is a family-owned dessert business that started in California. They currently have a location in Ada County, and they've just signed a lease in another location in Canyon County, and they are seeking to also add a lease to a location here in Caldwell if you can find the right location. We did show Mr. Jeff Dancer's space. Unfortunately, that was not a good fit for them, but they are working with another owner of a space, so hopefully that will work out for them, and hopefully we'll have some updates next month. Project Rat, this is a local Caldwell business that's seeking to expand their business by opening up a new location, and hopefully we'll have additional information here in April for that project. Project V is a downtown business that's seeking to relocate space as their current space in downtown does not meet their needs. Project 8, this is a national group. We've engaged them in conversations for future expansion in our community. They currently have a few locations in the Ada County area. Just some downtown business comments and updates. The theater, I spoke with them a couple weeks ago. They've had the busiest year since they've been open at that location, so they are doing great. We are having a shoulder season, so I did want to bring this to your attention. Shoulder season is where we have smaller crowds, less activities, and I just want to say that Danae and her team are doing an amazing job at addressing that this year. They are having a couple of events next week on the 13th and the 14th, so please participate if you can. There was another great event that just happened over the weekend where we had at Litton Co. They did a candle making workshop, and they had people all the way from Avamore coming out here, and I spoke to a few of the attendees, and I would say the majority of them were from Ada County, and were spending their money here, and kind of gave me some feedback on what else we're missing here in Caldwell in terms of additional activities. Creekside Market, as you may have seen on Facebook, they are closing March 2nd. This is the retail store, just the retail store. And we've been having conversations with them since I've been here, so this is not news to me. They have found a new tenant. It will be moving into that space, I believe, April 1st, and I will announce that at the next meeting. She might have shared that information with some of you, but she asked that I not share that just now. So those are my downtown updates, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ophelia. Questions?
I do have a quick question.
Mr. Rogan?
Either for Ophelia or Stephen, either one. The project out on Cleveland, 34th and Cleveland, the new Arthur going through there, we have some development planned out there, commercial. Is that still moving, or did that stall, or where are we at on that? 34th Lake and Cleveland, 34th and Cleveland, out by Franklin Building Supply.
Oh, I think he's talking about this canal project. So that's still on the market. So nothing moving just yet, but still on the market. We do have a deficit in commercial space, so I know Stephen has engaged in conversations with some great developers, and we're hoping to, give them that information that we are at a deficit when it comes to commercial space.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Ophelia. Ophelia, in just not to open a can of worms here, but in your day-to-day travels and you're going through places or you're going in, coming out, or you're attending things, how do you see current parking conditions on existing businesses or maybe some businesses that have voiced a concern? How is that year to date?
Yeah, sure. So as you know, parking is a really sticky situation. I've talked to many businesses, and I'm happy to have a one-on-one with you and bring you to those businesses. Some businesses have always expressed the need for some sort of parking enforcement. Recently, I visited a business in downtown, and just kind of going back and forth with their neighbor, right? They'll put a cone in there because some of the neighbors will park there for all day, and so not allowing for customers to park there. Another thing that I've seen in my walking travels through downtown is that even though we emphasize that TVCC parking lots available or behind the church or Albany, they will not park directly in front of their business, but will go park in front of another business. So that's one thing that I always bring to their attention is, hey, look, I know when everyone's working in downtown because I walk downtown every day. So that's one of the things I'm seeing. In terms of some of the businesses that may be a little bit more upset with the parking enforcement that's coming, they've been, I would say, hit a little bit harder because of where parking is going to be in the future in terms of where the parking for the Tillian folks will be parking. I have assured them that we will work with them to make sure we, find additional ways of parking. I've also asked them to engage with their neighbors in terms of, is there a private business that might have additional parking for you? How do you, lease a couple of spaces for your employees? So those are conversations I've had. I know there's a few others that have gone directly to the city and have said, hey, look, they're parking in front of my parking space. My customers are not able to come in. From my observation, this is my observation, the businesses that are not doing as well, they're going to have a little bit more of a heartburn because there's already that barrier. I'm not doing well to begin with. And one of the things the resources I provide to those businesses are connecting them with the SBA or other folks out there. If there's something specific that the city can do to remove those barriers, we will do so. For example, Creekside Market, if you're on the plaza crossing across to that building, you're going to see that there's no crosswalk, or there are crosswalks, but people won't go to the end of the stage and cross between the stage into that dirt lot that we own. And so Brent and his team, I brought that to their attention, and they added a crosswalk to that space with additional signage. So if there's barriers that we can remove, we are removing those barriers. And again, this specific company that was having Lit & Co., I said, hey, look, send her a text. February is here. I think you should do some sort of an event. And it was a sold-out event in less than 2 weeks. So those are the things that we are doing to help educate those businesses in terms of bringing in that crowd. And again, Danae and her team are doing an amazing job in terms of addressing that shoulder season. There's always been a shoulder season, but her and her team are adding additional activities to bring more people in.
Thank you for that observation.
Absolutely.
Mr. Doty?
Yes, just one quick question.
Sure.
You talked about a deficit in commercial space, but just tonight we've heard of several businesses that have no one in them.
Yep.
We've heard parking's an issue, so how do we calculate our deficit?
So the businesses that I've mentioned, like Mr. Dancer, and he has a great agent with Ms. Brianna Miller, who has been engaged with me, and so has Jeff in conversations. Sometimes those spaces are not the ideal spaces for that business, right? So, for example, that first project round, that was my intent. Let's fill out those spaces that we do have, and sometimes, like Jeff mentioned, it's just not ideal for that location. I know another business that looked at that location was a daycare, and it just doesn't meet the city ordinance or allowable use with a certain amount of children in that space. So Others have reached out to us asking for a drive-through. We don't have those. One that I can say publicly, because they are allowing me to mention their name, is Papa Kelsey's. Papa Kelsey's has been looking for a space near the schools, right? They currently are in eastern Idaho. They have a location off of Linder and 2026, and their ideal location would be somewhere in North Ranch. However, there is no space in North Ranch for them. Yes, you will see that there's TOKs, or not TOK, VVA has their own representatives. You will see that they still have space available. However, they have a no-compete clause with the folks that are there already. So Fat Guys is there, Papa Kelsey's can't move in next door. Or right now, they are looking into another business that I sent them. This could be a competitor of the other end user, the other end cap. So that's kind of where you see those deficits, is where we have space like Mr. Dancer's space. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work for that end user. Project Juice here, we walk through that space. Again, not a good location for them. Everybody right now wants to be in certain locations, and so that's what we're trying to work with, is we're trying to identify the land that has not been developed and trying to find the right users for those space. And like project operator, eventually the space will come available for them that makes sense for them, and we'll bring them right back with our friends. I won't name the city next door, but they do have a lot of incentives as well, right? They have incentives through URA, facade, the build out, grease traps. We don't have those incentives, and we're also looking at the price. If you're an entrepreneur, sorry, Jeff, I keep picking on you back there, but if you're an entrepreneur, you're not going to pay $22 square foot plus triple net. You're not going to pay at Tillion's $26 plus triple net. You're not going to pay that. So the empty spaces that we have, like Steven mentioned, the old video game store, that's $16 a square foot plus triple net. Well, the building needs a lot of help there as well. So, it's a lot to, I guess. There's a lot that goes into that. Absolutely.
Thanks, Ophelia.
Absolutely.
Takes us to Mark in our attorney reports.
I will be real quick. On the property tax interest and penalties issue with the county, as you know, I reported, I think in December, that they had sent a letter saying that they're monitoring this Kootenai County case that's making its way up to the Supreme Court. Well, it is in the Supreme Court. As far as I can tell, that case has not been assigned an oral argument date yet. That'll be up to the court, and then there will be some period of time, typically months, after the case is argued, that the decision will come out. So sometime later this year. Again, our only commitment, I think, to the county is we're not going to wait forever, but we'll wait for now. The reports tonight I thought were super helpful. And so I'm interested in what your thoughts are. We'll start the discussion with my thought is, after having listened to him, I think it's probably good to have him come back in March, kind of see how it goes from there and what we're hearing after a 1-month interval. And if there's several of them that don't have any update, maybe we can revisit that. But anyway, let me know what you'd like me to do. Now.
Right now? Mr. Chair?
Well, however you want to do it.
Reports as well, and I think, to benefit you, you're not having to try and keep track of all of that and what everyone's telling you and keeping your notes, and if they talk to you or Doug or someone else in your office for an update, then you're trying to come here and present it, and I think it's good to hear from them and their commitment to what they're doing, or sometimes we can see a lack of commitment, to what they're doing, so I think it's beneficial. So I think monthly for now, till we get our arms wrapped around it. It seems like it was kind of a mixed bag, and if they have very little to say, then they have very little to say.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Ward?
Sorry. If we're going to do that, we might want to agendize them a little differently, so they don't have to sit through 3 hours of meetings before they get an opportunity to speak.
One thing that just occurs to me is, I don't think we always have to have the CEO or the president or whatever come. If it can be somebody that they've designated to deliver the report and answer questions, that might make it easier for them to accommodate, the every month. There was a couple of them that had some concern about that. So if I'm okay to convey as long as this person can speak on your behalf and answer questions on your behalf, then okay.
Yeah, early in the Tillian project, we had Chandler showing up for most of the information things, so
Yeah.
I don't have a problem. Mr. Aldridge?
Maybe after a few months, and we get, I mean, we don't have a ton of projects, so after we get everything in line, then we just determine some triggering events, you know. If somebody's going to be behind on a timeline or anything, that's a triggering event rather than, you know, coming forward every month and saying we're doing exactly what we said we'd do and have a nice day, but yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Garcia?
So I think milestones are the big ticket. Issues is another ticket. But possibly even the smaller ones, they could probably just call those in if they don't have a representative, just a thought.
On Zoom?
Zoom.
Yeah.
I mean, so that way
Right.
there's an update, but I
Right.
think the larger items, they need to be here in person and present those, because it requires a larger presentation, much like Tillian today, and also express their concerns, so especially we have Rob here, and we gotta hold his feet to the fire if quite things aren't getting done, it'd be nice to have him here, so.
Mr. Chairman, just to say this, to Mr. Hilty, and Stephen, thanks for rounding up the troops and getting people here. I think it enables us to hear every month from somebody from each one, and it, makes it known that we are watching this, and it's not, if it does fall behind, we wanna work with you. If there's issues where you're not getting something done or you can't get something done, maybe that can be brought up. I've never seen anybody from Hotel Obi. We've never had a report
Urban Renewal Project.
there. I mean, we approved it.
No,
No.
it's not an urban renewal project.
Right, but, I mean, we discussed it. I mean, it would be nice to see somebody show up maybe to bring us up to speed on that, but I think you have to have somebody every month until that thing's completed. And being awarded a property, I mean, that's a pretty valuable thing and a pretty nice thing, so I think it would, eliminate a lot of work for you folks and put them directly to us.
Yeah, just one comment on that. OBI is a contract, well, it's not even a contract yet. They've been selected, they're in their due diligence, and again, that's with the city.
Right.
We don't have the same kind of leverage we have over the rest of them where they've got contractual
Yeah.
language.
Right.
Maybe we can reach out to them and see if they're willing to show up via Zoom. I mean, they're based in Oregon, of course.
Yeah.
I don't know how often they're over here, but, just let them know the request's been made and, you know, see if they're willing to come and share with.
Yeah, I've seen a project of theirs in Eugene. Be nice to meet them, to hear from them.
That would be, you know, they'd have to consent to do that, but we can talk to them.
Any other questions or comments? Does that give you enough to,
I think so, yeah.
very good. Thank you, Mark. Takes us to our commissioner reports. Anybody with something to, add to the dialogue tonight?
I think we've added plenty.
Have you had plenty? I would just comment that, the city is working on updating its comprehensive plan. If you have not had a chance to weigh in, go to the website and take a look at things and put your opinions in there. Is Rob still here? Did he sneak out?
Nope.
Okay. All right. A very serious question I wanted to ask Rob was that realistically, honestly, 20 years from now, without an urban renewal area, would we see new sidewalks on Freeport Avenue?
There are no sidewalks on Freeport Avenue.
I'm not sure that we would.
Well, just picking a less
Sidewalk.
blighted area, Montana Avenue in front of Washington School. How long did it take to get sidewalks anywhere in that neighborhood, even though there's kids up and down Montana Avenue all the time?
So, I was gonna say, I asked Rob about the sidewalks, and he said it's actually more costly for the city to build sidewalks than it is for developers. Because most of the time the city doesn't own the right of way, so we actually have to purchase the right of way first. And, the way the cost of land is going, I mean, we're paying a lot. So that, he said it's not worthwhile for the city to build sidewalks. It's very expensive. Not worth, I shouldn't say worthwhile. it's not cost effective for the city to build sidewalks. It's very expensive, so, they'll build it with the intersection because it's cheaper to do it that way. When they're building out roads, it's cheaper, but sidewalks by themselves is not cost effective, so.
Mr. Chairman, on a side note for Ray Lynn, so we have $17 million in a public street department fund as of January 2024. And then Councilman Doty, you said that we're 10 people short in that department, and we're over budget. How much?
We used to be short, I'm not sure what the number is now. 7?
Is it 7? Just off the top of our heads?
Raylene might be able to answer.
Yeah, it's about, I believe it's 5 to 7 people still short, yeah. They're pulling people for snow removal, they pulled it from other departments to help with snow
Yeah.
removal, so, yeah.
So then how much, if we have 17 million in reserves, how much are we committed to
To,
projects?
that's hard to say off the top of my head. Yeah, I'd have to look at the budget to
Yeah.
see. I don't know. He did say that for sidewalks, there's about $500,000 committed out of that budget.
Out of the 17 million,
Mm-hmm.
500,000. I thought it was in excess of 23 million.
I think what he's referring to, Raylene, is when we talk about projected projects, I guess, so to speak, that his list exceeds the 17 million. Clearly, we don't spend that in 1 year. I
Yeah,
think it might be
it
where.
does. That is true. There is definitely more projects. But I will say Rob didn't also set this budget. We had a previous public works director that was very, goal-oriented about projects. So, a lot of what the street department has been doing has been dealing a lot with URA. And so they've been reprioritizing with that. And so they've built up a little bit of fund balance, because they've been dealing with that and then basic maintenance and operations. And so I can see within the next coming years, also with the mitigation project. So in the next coming years, that's going to be reprioritized, and we're gonna see that fund balance decrease rapidly, unless we have other URA projects that are going to reprioritize that, which right now we don't have that, so that's not going to happen.
Right.
Very good. Thanks for the dialogue. Didn't mean to do that. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Or is everybody sure?
Quick.
Can you move and second?